Hello friends, in our last video we have understood what is the Redux middleware, and we have seen even with the example we did the we created an API middleware and loading the employees, and we have showing the logs as well. Now in this video we are going to understand what is the Redux Thunk. Okay, so Redux Thunk is nothing but it's a Redux middleware that allows us to dispatch a function instead of plain action object. So we'll understand this point once we start doing the coding part. So but what it do is enabling asynchronous operations such as API calls before dispatching regular Redux action. So it's the same thing, it works similar as a middleware. It sits again between a action and a reducer. Okay, if you need to do any asynchronous operations, we use a Redux Thunk, and it comes by default with a RTK kit. Okay, we no need to include it with any npm package, or we no need to write any separate custom code here. It comes default with a RTK kit, and it's nothing but it's a middleware. Now what it do is it's dispatching a function instead of plain action object. Just keep it mind this statement, I will show while doing the coding. Let me quickly reiterate our custom middleware first. So we have created two middlewares. One is the logger, okay, and by using the next action it will dispatch an event, okay, to the reducer. And similarly we have created an API middleware. So what it will do, it will call, if we need to do any asynchronous service calls, API calls, it does it, and then finally we are doing the set employees method. So what we are doing, if you see here, whenever we do a dispatch, what we are passing to, it's an object, right, with a payload and type. So this is generally what we used to do, okay, with middlewares. But now coming back to this, my first statement, in case of Redux Thunks, it is not going to be the plain action object. Okay, this what we are dispatching instead, we are dispatching the functions instead. Okay, so it is not going to be like, let me go back here, it is not going to be an object, it is going to be a function directly. We will see now when we do the coding for it. And in our store.ts file, what we have created is we have a middleware, default middleware. We are just concatenating our these two. Now to understand Redux Thunk, right, let me go to our features file, Redux feature file. So as I told, createAsyncThunk comes default with the Redux JS toolkit. Okay, we just imported it, and by using the createAsyncThunk we have created the same API. So the API in last time we have created here as a custom middleware. Instead we can directly use a createAsyncThunk, and we did the API here. Okay, and whenever you use a createAsyncThunk, it gives us extra features like it handles its state, right, like pending, fulfilled, rejected. So by using this fetch employee thunk, let's say if the request is in a pending state, it will show like loading true and error will be null, and we won't set any employee state, right, the array it will be, let's consider as empty. And once the request is success, what happens is this state will be updated with the latest. Okay, and similarly if it is rejected, we will show the error, what error it would be, and loading will be false. So all these things comes provided by the thunk by default to us. We can handle this one. Because of this extra features, we have to write it into extraReducers. Earlier we are writing it every actions within the reducers, right? But instead in the case of thunks, we have to write it into extraReducer. That's why I written here thunk lifecycle, and once the API request started, these are the different states, API phase, right, pending, fulfilled and rejected. Based on that one, states will be updated and view will be reflected. Hope this is understandable. Just reiterating it, createAsyncThunks I imported, and by using that I did the API call, and I have used the extraReducer because I have to handle the states, and based on that one we are setting the state, and it will reflect to the UI. And now the thing comes to its usage, right? So previously in our add employee here in our application, we are calling a external API by hitting the custom middleware API middleware. Okay, now instead of that one, what we are going to do is we are going to use a fetchEmployeeThunk. Okay, we have written it into our employeeSlice.ts file, just copying this method and we just copying it. So as I told, it will not dispatch object, right, with the actions and payload. What it will be, directly we are going to use a function. Okay, and Thunk will, once it is a function, it will be understood and they will handle it accordingly, asynchronously. Okay, I've just put any for now type. So now what I'm doing, I'm just calling a direct function. Okay, now let me reload the screen. Okay, and click on the load employee from API. So this time it comes from the Thunk, and we are getting this our previous custom logs, and we hit the API and we are able to get the data, and this data we are displaying below. So now we integrated our custom Thunk, Redux Thunk instead of custom. Now let me go to our this file where we will just reiterate it. So this is the flow with a custom Thunk, right? When we use a not Thunk, when we use a custom API middleware like previous, the flow is like component will dispatch that API calls, it goes to the middleware, and it will do this asynchronous operations, and finally dispatch a reducer store, and the UI will be updated. In Redux Thunk, things are similar. Directly in this dispatch we will do a functions, and the Thunk's middleware will handle the synchronous operations, and finally the same steps will go to reducer store, and UI will be updated. So if you see just the difference, so middleware contains API logic, here the Thunk function contains API logic, correct? And we have seen this already, and middleware watches intercept action, like this is usually an action. Okay, middleware performs fetch, and in this case execute function, return a function. Okay, middleware here, who will call the method fetch will be called by middleware. Here Thunk is doing the fetch method, right? And more custom middleware code, here the code will be somewhat, we need to write a more, but it comes with a built-in RTK, and you define your own API middleware pattern. Okay, in the custom we can do our way, and RTK includes the Thunk by default. Now just to see the definition and key points, Redux Thunk is middleware used to handle asynchronous logic in Redux. That is very much understandable now. Okay, and normally Redux expects action to be a plain object. So we already discussed, whenever we do a dispatch, usually it used to be an object, but when we use a Thunk, it will be a function. Okay, the Thunk middleware detects that the dispatch value is a function and executes it. So automatically it understands, like if it is a function, it's a Thunk middleware will be executed. And what kind of operation it does? Calling a API, fetch, async, awaits, timers. Okay, reading the state with the get state method. And then in Redux Toolkit we commonly create thunks using this method, createAsyncThunk. And it automatically generates the 3 lifecycle actions, which is pending, fulfilled, and rejected, which we already have seen. And this lifecycle is handled where? In extraReducer. Okay, and RTK configure store includes Thunk's middleware by default, which we already discussed. So normally we no need to install any things separately for it. Hope you understand the video. Thank you.